Welcome everybody to the next installment in the Risk Management Back to Basics video series. This segment is going to discuss the listing agreement from the seller perspective. My name is Matt Johnson. I am counsel to the New Hampshire Association of Realtors and also shareholder at Divine Millimet. With me is Susan Cole, who is also a member of our Risk Management Subcommittee. Susan, thanks for your help today. The topic today is the listing agreement from the seller perspective. I'm going to touch on some high note aspects of some of the key provisions, but then I want to hear from you from a practical standpoint of how you get this message across to a new seller and a new listing to make sure they understand what their responsibilities are, but also what the realtor's responsibilities are. So having said that, I'll jump right in. The listing agreement is obviously a very important document. It is the contract by which a listing agent is authorized to try to sell a piece of property for someone. So simple points, anyone who has interest in the property needs to sign that listing agreement. You should put in the book and page if you can. I think it's just good to be very clear about what actually is being sold, particularly if that seller owns more than one type of property or maybe two lots and one of them is not being sold and one is. It's just important to be careful. I think you need to talk about you have to have a set end date from the listing agreement. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble with the real estate commission because the code requires it to be a fixed end date. You need to talk about price ideas. You need to talk about the commission to make sure there's agreement on the commission. I would make sure and go through and explain to the sellers the sort of look back provision that there is in all our agreements, that to the extent the agreement ends, but then the seller were to sell the property to someone who had seen it during our period of the entitlement to the commission. You should explain the dual agency scenarios. That's important. You should explain what the listing agreement says in terms of seller responsibilities. There are things and information you need to give the listing agent to do their job, but this is not a one-way street. You should also explain to this listing agent what they're getting, like what skills and duties are you providing? Communication, effective marketing, maximizing the value of the property. I mean, those are the types of specific tasks that you're really tasked with as the listing agent. So you should talk about those. And then at the second page, there's a whole section of boxes relative to different terms of the listing, whether it could be posted on the MLS, all those types of things. There are check boxes, so they're easy to go quickly and kind of blow through them, but you should not blow through them. Take them carefully and review them. And finally, there's some additional provisions. Make sure there is discussion if there's anything unique or special. This could be the classic example where maybe you want delayed showings for some reason because there's work being done on the property. Make sure that's all spelled out. So again, that's a handful. That's a lot of legal concepts to talk about, but we do have form contracts. So Susan, I'm going to turn it over to you. What have you found in your practice and experiences are successful tools to help get that information across the sellers so they can understand it and help them sell their house?
I think the key piece to that is sitting down with them and going through this contract. It is a contract. It's binding between the two parties, and it needs to be taken seriously in that regard. So again, that's not information they're used to seeing, and so taking our time to go through it diligently is important. The other thing is, we do live in an electronic world where many realtors are using the e-signatures and so forth, which is fine. It just does not shortcut our time that we need to spend with the sellers and going through that contract with them. We should still be diligent about that. Also mindful of when these folks actually sign. It may be that you do your part and you go through it carefully, and one of them just gets tied up with something and doesn't sign until like after midnight the next day, but your contract started the day before. You will need to make some adjustments to that to be sure that the contract is in line with when everyone signs. So it's something to just be aware of in our electronic time that we're living in, and it's a helpful process, but something we just have to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely right. If they don't sign it on the same day, you really need to make the contract effective as of the day the last person signed it, because until anyone who has an interest in the property has signed that listing agreement, you don't have the authority to do any actions on behalf of the property. So it is something you can get tripped up on, but something you should pay attention, because the real estate commission would look at that if there is a gap in the dates in particular. And so that's something they could be concerned about. Any other tips or advice for people with new listing contracts, a way to put the sellers at ease when they're going through this process? It's got to be stressful and nerve-wracking for them. Any other tips or suggestions?
Yeah, it is. It can be. It's a big moment for them. And I think helping them with the process, because it's more than just the contract, there's a big process involved. And so, again, looking at them and seeing what their needs are, trying to meet those needs, both from the house standpoint, preparing to sell, actually doing the contract with them. There's a lot of parts and pieces to it. And it takes a lot of time with those sellers in discussions and being the professional in which we all are.
Susan, that's great advice. Thanks so much for your help. We hope this helps people and gives people something to think about as they move forward and help their practice. And that's the end of this segment.